Hello there. We're at Brampford Speke today, just on the River Exe. It's not as sunny as I would have liked, but it's quite a bright day. We're going to have a go at the river scene that we just looked at, and be another acrylic study, and we'll see what we can make of it. The composition's quite interesting. So without further ado, let's get on with it. I start by making a few decisions about the scene which I'm about to paint. I decide on the height of the horizon line and sketch it in. This is a composition element. You can think about how much sky you want and how much landscape and the relative quantities of each in your painting. That's personal preference based on aesthetics. It's all down to experience, but it's worth making these decisions at the beginning, taking a little time rather than just going for it and hoping it'll work out. Sometimes a thumbnail sketch or something like that will help you to make these decisions. Having a good look at the scene before you start will help you to familiarise yourself with some of the elements. Look for the darkest darks, the lightest lights, the perspective. Look at any elements you don't understand and see what you think they might be, because this will help you to realise them. Working outside can take a bit of getting used to. It's great to be as comfortable as you possibly can, so your kit's really important. Keep it lightweight, keep it as simple as possible. That way you can erect it quickly, you can get started quickly, and time is of the essence when you're working outside, especially in Britain, because the light changes a lot and we're subject to different weather conditions. And when I'm working outside, I often use a simple range of colours on my palette. It's more portable this way and easier to make harmonious colour mixes. Familiarisation with your own range of colours should help you to decide what pigments to choose to help convey the scene that you've chosen. This comes with practice, of course, and experience, and I can't emphasise practice enough. When I've decided on my composition, I'll often lightly sketch it in. You might notice I used a blue pencil here. I don't know why I do that, I just do. I quite like the colour, and it's not too obtrusive and it seems to disappear nicely under the paint. It's just a personal preference. So once I've sketched things out, and I only do it lightly to get the salient points and the main compositional elements in, then I'll start to block things in, trying to be as accurate as I can with colour and as minimal as I can with brush marks. So I use the biggest brush I can get away with comfortably, and cover up as much of the painting in one hit as I can, and then I can work over those areas gradually as the painting develops. I often stand up when I'm painting outside, and I like to stand back reasonably often to compare my painting with the scene behind. It gives you a fresh viewpoint to move away from it, so you don't get too bogged down with particular areas and you see the painting as a whole then. The light seems to be changing all the time when you're working outside. It's a subtle thing. Either the sun's moving across the sky or dodging behind clouds. Anyway, you have to bear in mind a particular lighting effect you want to convey. So if you've got strong shadows, it's worth penciling them in or painting them in early on so you don't forget what it looked like. We can often be put off by a scene that looks very busy or complicated, but these scenes can be quite attractive. So how do we tackle it? How do we get past that? Well, I think it's simplification. If you aim to simplify it and see it in simple terms, then that really helps to break things down into manageable chunks. I find that making that block in as simple as possible, as it appears on the film at the moment, really helps to give me a strong foundation on which to build more detailed areas, and gives you something to base the rest of the painting around. The piece of stick I'm using there is it's actually a bit of old picture frame. I use it as a straight edge, but also as a marl stick to rest my hand on sometimes. It's got a bit of a screw sticking out the end of it that I can hook round the edge of the painting to help anchor it. And I find that a really useful bit of kit. I don't use it too often, but it's nice to have it in the bag, and it's very lightweight. So sometimes after I've blocked things in, I'll start to draw in a little bit with a finer brush. I'm completing the block in here, and this sort of exposed mud on the bank is a reddish colour, very typical of Devon soil, and so I've blocked that in quite quickly, as you can see. I'm just finishing a small bush that was situated in the middle of the field just across the river. I think a lot of paintings go through fairly ugly stages, and this is probably one of the uglier stages, when you've just got things almost blocked in and it looks patchy. You've just got to rely on your experience, keep pressing forward, and know that you'll work through it. And I've given up at this stage before, but I've learned to just persevere, and it's a good thing. And if you do, and believe that you can do it, it usually pays off. So bear that in mind if you're working outside. Here I'm darkening the river a little, because you'll see later on that there are tiny little sparkles on the water, and those help to make it look wet. They show that the light reflecting off it and that it's moving, give it a little bit of reality. So I've made the river darker than it actually was in order to accommodate that. Sometimes you might put in a light spot that's a little bit too bright, and you could knock that back with your finger, just to take it down a tone or so. I think from start to finish this painting probably took about 2 to 2.5 hours. All the while I was controlling the camera as well, so that's another consideration I have to take on board these days when I'm working outside. The dark line I'm emphasising at the moment illustrates the riverbank as it curves in its meandering way around and out of sight, and I particularly like that, and I like the light of the field behind it. That horizontal greenish yellow line really does make the composition interesting to me. That's what caught my eye in the first place. Now I've introduced some of those sparkles, you can just see them going across the river just above where my brush is working now, and the darks in the shade under the trees and these top lit little bushes. This area really is aiming at the centre of focus. It's the kind of main area. The left hand, there's something happening, but it's not so important. I'm drawing in a little bit as I go now, building up the bank and adding a few darks to it. It's good to actually draw over the top of the paint sometimes, just to delineate certain features, and then you can work them up as you go. try to see the painting as a whole and work on as many areas as possible. Sometimes you've just got to bottle down to a particular area and build it up, get it finished. But constantly reevaluating the whole thing and looking at everything to see that it all relates and that there are connections, and that basically it reads as a landscape or as an image, and it's believable, and it has space and perspective. So all those things are considerations you have to make when you're working outside or on any painting really. I'm probably at least half a mile away from the railway at this point, but the sound's really carrying across the floodplain. Now these little pinpricks on the horizon were actually cows, and they could be haystacks, they could be all kinds of things, but it was a herd of cows that had been grazing on the fields, and I particularly liked that. I didn't try to paint them as cows, I just put them in, but they draw the eye and break up the horizon with little pinpricks of light, so quite interesting. And now I'm just putting a few finishing touches and highlights on that water just to bring it to life. A few more of those sparkles, contrast of light against dark, and then a few touches to the horizon as well, varying the blue slightly to suggest trees and different depths, and working through the foliage here. Well, we've had a good old session and we're just about done as much as we can do at the moment. Might have a wander and see what else I can find. So that's that really.